Welcome back. All four senators from Maryland and Virginia have asked the Senate to extend CARES Act benefits for defense contractors until the end of the calendar year. If it doesn't, Section 3610 of the CARES Act will expire at the end of September. Amy Benson is Vice President of Government Affairs at SAIC and writing about this extension in FCW. Amy, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. You write in this piece, this failure to extend these benefits leaves many companies and contractors in uncertain territory and having to consider new scenarios for their workforces moving forward. What's your sense of what those new scenarios for their workforces look like?
Thank you, Francis. I appreciate your having me here today. Unfortunately, the point of Section 3610 was to make sure that the workforce was kept whole, to make sure that contractors had paychecks throughout the pandemic. When federal facilities shut down and they can't get to their workplace, they still need to provide for their families and pay their mortgages. 3610 has been instrumental throughout the pandemic in allowing us to make sure that our employees had paychecks throughout. Without 3610, when it expires September 30th, a lot of companies will be in the situation of having to make some hard decisions and think about alternative scenarios. For those whose employees are back to work, they may be able to continue operating, but if COVID continues into the fall and winter and facilities need to shut down, no company can afford to keep their employees sitting on the bench for an amount of time yet to be determined. So with a tight workforce, with a lot of competition for highly skilled employees out there, I'm scared that employees may decide to take a second look at whether they want to whether government service is the right answer for them, when they can go to work for a commercial company that allows them to telework and allows them to keep providing for their families.
Are the commercial companies that may potentially poach these employees, though, in any better shape than the government contractors are, given what's happening in the overall economy, Amy?
Well, I think many of them are, because they're able to telework for a lot of their missions. For the government mission in particular, if you think about the classified space, it's not conducive to social distancing, yet our employees are supposed to go and show up for work and then be off the next week. They're expected to do shift work. In that case, those employees may not want to take the chance of waiting to see if their paycheck's going to come through or not. They may not want to take the chance of having 50% of their pay or working the strange hours when they can work from home for a commercial company. We don't want to see that. Our employees are our biggest asset, and we'd like to hold on to them and maintain them. I'm particularly worried about the small businesses in these scenarios.
So when you use the word employees, you kind of anticipate my next question, which is this something that you're worried about at the prime level, at the SAIC type level, even with a company with a balance sheet like a prime has, or is this something you're more worried about in the supply chain, further down the chain, in the sub chain?
Both. I'm particularly worried about the small businesses who can't handle a couple of weeks off. And SAIC can probably bridge the gap a little bit easier for our employees than some of the smaller companies. I'm worried about the small shops with a couple of, dual employees for the federal government that may decide they just want to hang it up, or they can't afford to sit around waiting. In that case, that's going to be a huge loss to the government mission. That's a lot of retraining. You have to go through clearance processes again and rehiring of new employees. In the long run, that ends up being a lot more expensive to not only the company, but also to the federal government and the taxpayer.
A lot of the discussion, Amy, around 3610 has revolved around finances and sustainability. You make a point about 3610 in this piece in FCW that I hadn't heard before. You're right, without an extension, continuity of government operations through the COVID-19 crisis will be threatened. How so?
Well, again, if you lose those critical employees, those are folks that the government is relying on to keep the government mission going. I mean, the federal contractor is a prime partner for the federal government to keep things going. If we lose these very, again, skilled, highly cleared individuals, puts the government mission in jeopardy.
We have less than a minute left, Amy. What will you watch other than funding, than an extension on 3610? Is there anything else that would solve or remedy the situation a little bit, or is it really an either or?
You know, the funding is important in this. It really is, especially for DOD and NASA, who have funding requests into the Congress currently and being considered in the Senate HEALS Act. However, the extension itself of the authorization, that impacts more than just DOD and NASA. That impacts all agencies. It utilizes existing appropriations. So whether it be on the next COVID relief package or on a continuing resolution, it's just vital that we get the authorization through. Otherwise, we'll be looking at a lot of requests for equitable adjustment and other such contracting mechanisms that takes away from the workforce's ability to do the emergency contracting they need to do currently.
Amy Benson, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Francis. Really appreciate the opportunity.